Welcome to the Heels on Water podcast. This is where we learn to walk on the water in our storms with the courage, confidence, and grace we were designed with. I'm your host, Dr. Alette Stephen, and I am glad that you found our boat. So let's put on our heels and get ready to step out on that water. Last week, I told you I had stories about learning to trust and giving up the driver's seat. I'll share one today that my husband had loved to share because it was a true turning point for him in staying on Hope Road, being fully guided by the Holy Spirit when the road disappeared, and truly trusting in God for the journey that God told him to take. So I have some questions for you. How do you know what to do when there are conflicting options or seemingly no options? What do you do when all options seem possible or none seem plausible? I'll tell you what you do. You go back to the mic drop. I don't mean the point where you put your foot down and made a final decision. Go back to the last thing God told you to do. Go back to the last thing He showed you. It's in that gut feeling, that small, quiet voice that whispered to you. It's there in the thing you know you should do, but might be afraid to step out to do. A dear friend says, "Go where only faith will take you." A favorite song of mine says, "Lead me where my faith is without borders, deeper than my faith could ever wander." Now, how do you get there, you ask? Sit down. Let me tell you a story. Just stay with me to the end. My husband had been an avid mission trip supporter. He would gladly help others follow the Great Commission to go to all the world and make disciples, but he was not going anywhere. He followed the Great Commission's hidden addendum: send people into all the world, by becoming a sponsor. In December of 2016, God tapped him on the shoulder and told him that his number came up in the deli, and it was my husband's turn to go on a mission trip to Baja, Mexico in June of 2017. After a bit of debate with God, really a lot of debate, my husband conceded and agreed to go. Then he procrastinated, and finally in April of 2017, he couldn't put it off any longer because the trip was scheduled for June. He had 2 months to get everything completed. But he had absolutely nothing done. My husband found himself short on time to get the sponsorship funds collected, much less anything else. He started several conversations with me about the likelihood of the trip. All I found myself able to say to him was, "What did God say?" It forced him to respond, "I'm going to Baja." I heard the divine mic drop. We prepared to get his supplies, even while waiting for the sponsorships to accumulate. He also needed a passport since he was going out of the country. Wouldn't you know, the office closest to us in Miami, Florida, had just flooded. This meant that he had to send the application packet to the office in the Northeast U.S. That would have been a plan, except we didn't have the application fee. Once again, he had questions about the probability of going. Once more to his questions, I could only respond, "What did God say?" Once more, he had to respond, "I'm going to Baja." Again, the divine mic dropped. Our on-time God sent the ram in the bush, and a friend from church spontaneously offered to pay for the passport application. So we mailed it off. That's favor and grace. Before you knew it, we got a letter from the passport office saying that he could not have a passport because of child support delinquency issues, which were really news to us. We didn't have any time to get that part straightened out, but because of the time crunch, we needed more favor from God to move this mountain. The representative reviewed the regulations and discovered an allowance in the regulation that she had never seen before. My husband could get an exception from the passport office if the trip was approved by her supervisor. The rep asked where my husband was planning to go, and he told her that it was a mission trip to build a church and a parsonage in Baja, Mexico. She asked him for more information, so he gave her the website for the trip, and she could see my husband's sponsorship account. She sent the information forward to her supervisor. While we waited for the response, we continued to prepare for the trip. Some time passed, and we received a letter in the mail that his application had been processed, but his Social Security number was wrong. Now, I need you to understand that while he was on the phone with her originally, he and the rep verified his number 3 times. So he called and found that he could resend the correct number to the office. We did that and waited some more. Yet again, there were questions if there was enough time to get all of this straightened out in time for the trip. By now, we were about a week away from the departure date. Will it happen? Will he go? We had so many questions. All that would come out of me was, what did God say? All he could respond was, I'm going to Baja. Mic drop again. By now, all of the sponsorship funds had miraculously been contributed, and we could check that off the list. Are you on the edge of your seat yet? I told you, learning to trust is a process. We had been practicing because we had our fair share of situations earlier in our lives. But this was like being thrown into the championship game without warning. Remember, we still did not have the passport. But wait, there's more. We also did not have the plane tickets he needed to leave or to return. No passport, no plane tickets, and only 1 week. He couldn't still be going, could he? Who does this? Questions. But what did I respond? What did God say? And what did my husband respond? I'm going to Baja. Mic drop. Now don't get me wrong. His mind wanted to speak the doubts all along. But we've been taught about the absolute power in our words, and his spirit would not let them come out. Honestly, I also had my doubts, but my mouth would not form the words. I kept hearing God say to my spirit, don't say it, say only, what did God say? As the one created to be the helpmeet for my husband, I had to obey God, stay the course, and encourage him. As a side note, I'll admit to you that I have real feelings about the whole Genesis chapter 2 verse 18 discussion about when God said, it is not good for man to be alone. That's why he created woman, a helpmeet for man. I used to repeat that to my husband frequently. But again, that's for another day. I strongly advise you to fasten your seatbelt at this point. If you thought the first part was a roller coaster, the end of the story is like a road race with many twists, turns, and bumps. Okay, so about the passport. There was a delay in receiving the package at the passport office. What we did not know was that it was just sitting in the passport office mailroom unsorted for a few days. The rep had to go down to the mailroom to find it. This was on the Monday before the Wednesday that they were supposed to leave for the trip. So the rep would have to send the passport overnight on Tuesday so it could be delivered to us by Wednesday morning. But the problem was, it would not be delivered to our house until after the plane was scheduled to take off from the airport. Oh yeah, that's the plane he still didn't have the ticket for. We asked if the passport could be held at the FedEx office for pickup. We were told it could and would be ready for pickup at 9 a.m. The flight was scheduled to depart at 11 a.m., and the office wasn't even close to the airport. What did God say? I asked him. I'm going to Baja, he said. Mic drop. Now, I gotta backtrack to this ticket situation. The plane that they were supposed to take had been booked full for months. There were no available seats. Oh, and yeah, we still didn't have the money for the tickets. All we knew was that God said my husband was going. How it would happen was above our pay grade. We just kept moving forward, trusting in faith. We found out that God placed on another brother's heart to sponsor my husband's flights. Okay, that's cool, but there still weren't any seats available. So we tried calling the airline and we tried the internet, hoping for cancellations. We even tried to get a seat on a different flight and meet them later. That was a no-go. Then the airline's systems went down, so we had no way to find any tickets. Some friends had been praying and they called to share a vision that my husband would be on the flight with the rest of the group. God was speaking again. Is that a light at the end of the tunnel or just a reflection? What did God say? I'm going to be on the flight. Mic drop. So, we're back to Wednesday morning, departure day. We leave to go pick up the passport. On the way, we call the mission trip leader and let him know we're on our way to get the passport, but have not gotten a ticket yet. After waiting for the FedEx office to open, he gets the passport and we begin racing to the airport. We call our trip leader again, and he tells us that our brother who is buying the ticket will try to go to another airline's ticket counter to get a ticket. What did God say? I'm going to Baja. Without us knowing it, and before we arrived at the airport, instead of going to another ticket counter, our brother goes to the original airline counter to tell them they need to find a seat on this flight because there's a man on the way to the airport who is coming on this mission trip and needs a seat. He buys the ticket for my husband without my husband or his information. Now, who does that post 9/11? And it was on the same flight everyone else is flying on. Yeah, the flight that had no seats. God found a seat or had one hidden. We arrive at the airport curb with passport and bags in hand, not knowing any of this has happened. My husband is cheered on by the rest of the group. He's greeted by the purchaser and is given his boarding pass for the flight leaving in mere minutes. Here's the kicker. It was a one-way ticket. You guessed it. A return ticket was not available. But after coming this far, we could go only where faith could take us. Although God never explicitly said my husband was returning from Baja, we had believed this far, so why not believe for a return ticket too? And don't you know, they found one before the brief mission trip was complete. I don't know how or exactly when the ticket was bought, but my husband came home with the rest of the group. Now be reassured. God's mic drop never fails. And God is faithful and right on time. But he surely doesn't have any respect for our sweat glands. Trust is a process. When we believe that God has our best interest in mind, we can move forward in faith. We also must be careful to be obedient and not to speak against what God can do. Doubts are poison to your blessings. Like doubt, faith is contagious. But unlike doubt, faith is energizing. A lifestyle of faith leads to a consistent outcome of joy and peace. It will not always be easy, but that's why Holy Spirit was sent as a comforter. Oh yeah, don't forget about that help meet discussion I promised. Stay tuned. It's coming. I'm looking forward to being out here on the water with you, so follow the Heels on Water podcast so you know when the next episode leaves the dock. And share the podcast with a woman you care about. Heels on, eyes up. Talk to you next Tuesday.